everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. It's Terry, your host. So I'm here at the Pittston terminal. I am not having good luck trying to get my truck in the shop to get my APU fixed, and I'm thinking, because now they're backed up here, I thought, okay, I picked up a load in Laurel, Maryland that's going over to Massachusetts in I'll probably leave in about an hour. And I was like, oh, well, I'll go up there, do my 10 there. I couldn't even get, and I'm not saying this is anything super negative, but when I got here last night, or this morning about 4, I guess, I called the tractor shop. Nobody answered. The phone just rang and rang and rang and rang. So then I woke up. I was sleeping. I woke myself up with my alarm, and I called them. They're like, oh, we're backed up 2 days. And, you know, candidly, I don't want to sit around Pittston for 2 days to get my APU fixed. I want to get it fixed. But I think what's ultimately going to happen is it's going to end up getting fixed when I go out to Springfield. Probably in about a week, I'll be heading out, and I'm going to end up in Springfield. So I'll try to get there a couple of days early before I have to get my PSD student on the truck, and, you know, see if I can get my APU fixed. I also probably, I'll have to take some measurements, but I probably want to get some new drives, like all 4, but we'll see. See how that looks. And I don't know if there's anything else I really need to get done on the truck, but being down in Florida last week, I had to idle the truck because it was pretty warm down there. It was like in the 90s, so I had B on board. I went home just to do my 10 before I picked up this load, so it was kind of funny. B likes being with me, but before I could even get out the door, she ran in between my legs under the steering wheel, jumped out, and like just as soon as my wife, because my wife met me, I had a trailer, so I had to go to a parking lot. She met me at the parking lot, and B, like the minute she opened up her driver's door, B just like jumped in her car. So B likes her dad, but she really likes just being home with everybody. So, but it was fun having her, and you know, I think she had an okay time. So anyway, so that's that. So today's March 7th, and on this day in 1965, it was an important event in civil rights history, and this is when the marchers tried to march from Selma, Alabama to Montgomery, and they were met at the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma and told to disperse, and then they were beaten by state troopers and sheriff's deputies, and it was pretty savage, and it was televised to the nation, and they were beaten with batons and bullwhips and other manner of, you know, inhumanity just for wanting to march for voting rights. Eventually the march did get made, but by Martin Luther King, and along with like 25,000 supporters instead of the, you know, the, I don't know, few hundred that started on March 7th. It didn't get finished until March 25th. But what that march did in the outcry over it was to prompt the creation of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. And that act was enacted 5 months later, so it was really quick. Lyndon Johnson was like, you know, hey, this was outrageous, and you know, it's not a national question, you know, it's, you know, people express that it's not a national or state question, it's just a human right. And which kind of begs, you know, the question about what's going on now in a lot of these places that the protests originally happened. And if you're curious about why it is that the federal government doesn't have more power, it's because the Supreme Court a few years ago said, well, we feel like the states have met the basic requirements of the law and they no longer need to be supervised, because there was a provision in the law that said that states that had these egregious violations of voting rights, like poll taxes and literacy tests and, you know, all sorts of things that were impediments, or where there was intimidation as kind of a practice, you know, that was the states had met their burden to, you know, not do this. And by the way, a lot of states, the law is that police, for example, can't be at polling places. That's considered an intimidation tactic. And so now what's going on is that these states are now rolling out really restrictive voting laws and closing polling places in areas where it's minority voters, poor voters. And I guess without getting too political, because again, this is not about politics as much as it's just about people's right to exercise their citizenship. But I guess what I would say is, to anybody who thinks and by the way, voter fraud is like negligible. It is a tiny, very, 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 very few cases of it. And some of them are just mistakes, really. Like there's very, I mean, when I say very little, I'm talking about like a drop of water in an ocean little of, you know, actual people trying to defraud the system. It's just not that common. You know, the idea that somebody's going to stand in line for 5 hours to vote illegally, it just doesn't happen in any meaningful way. And so what I think is going on is that, you know, some people are like, well, if there's an election and everybody gets to vote, we might lose. But that's always been the case. But it was just the American way that the people got to speak. So if all the people who have the franchise don't get to speak, you know, then we got an issue with democracy. So I'll just leave it at that. But one thing I wanted to talk about today is what is called the bargain for exchange. And this is going to be a little bit of a legal talk, but it's also kind of in response to some of the comments I see on you know, YouTube, and some of the comments I get directly, and then also comments I've seen on other people's pages. So there's this strain of people in this industry in particular that when they decide that a company is bad, or when they decide that a contract is bad, then anybody who is affiliated with that company or anybody who signs one of those contracts is a flippin' moron, right? Like they've just determined that you're a total fucking idiot. And, you know, one of the things that bothers me about that is not, it doesn't bother me that somebody thinks I'm a total idiot or a moron. What bothers me is that they're poisoning a well that, you know, could be the source of really, you know, good things for some people. And here's what I'm talking about. So, you know, I'm a lease operator, and I've actually read the lease. And by the way, not for purposes of refuting what some of these naysayers are putting out, but actually just just to have a talk, like I would almost talk with a client about a lease, I'm gonna print out my lease when I'm home. I'm gonna be doing home time soon. I'm gonna print it out. I'm gonna go through every section, and I'm gonna highlight probably about 15 to 20 to maybe 25 sections of the lease that are really important to understand. And maybe I'll comment on whether it's good or bad, or really bad or really good. But really, my purpose is not to critique it as much as it is to just inform about it. And the reason I want to do that is because I used to review leases. I've reviewed, I'll say hundreds, but it might be over 1,000 leases for commercial property, commercial leases, you name it. And one of the things that I used to do is when somebody said, hey, I'm getting ready to renegotiate a lease, can you help me? I would say, sure. I say, let me see the lease you got now. And sometimes these leases would have been signed 10 years earlier, and then typically they would just renegotiate the salient points of it, because a lot of it's boilerplate. But they would renegotiate the salient points, and then that would be the new terms, kind of like that's where the money changes hands. But I would often say to people, hey, did you know your lease says this? And they'd be like, no. And or I'd say, well, do you know you're being charged for this? You're actually paying for this? And they'd be like, no. So that was a good thing about doing that review. So I'm gonna do that with my lease and share it with you. But let me say this. I know when I'm being ripped off. And it might seem strange to say, but sometimes I don't care if I'm being ripped off, because if I did care, I just won't do the deal. And let me give you an example. My wife and I bought a house, I think in 2006. And it turns out that it was a house that I really wanted, not to live in. I wanted it for my mom. And it also turns out it's right next door to my house, or the house I was living in then. And a lot of people wanted that house because of where it is, and it could be zoned commercial, but it really was something I wanted. So I knew what the house would appraise for. But guess what? I overpaid for it. And the market wasn't really that strong then. But, the seller was like, hey, look, and by the way, it was being sold by an estate, right? So there are lots of people involved. They're like, look, here's what we need to get for this. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to have to come up with a deal. And so I used to do deals. I figured out how to get this place financed. I had a side loan that the mortgage company didn't know about. I had the seller taking back some stuff. I ended up selling a car to a friend of mine that played in the NFL at the time to get the cash to pay off this short-term note. It was kind of convoluted, right? But the bottom line was we got the house. Now, it was a bad deal, okay? I overpaid for the house. And then I had to take out a side loan at a higher interest rate just to get the deal done. And I had to put some cash in it. But I got it done because I wanted the house. It didn't matter. It didn't matter that I overpaid because I got what I wanted. And so it is sometimes with other things, right? Like, here's an example. At Prime, you can buy a truck, right? And pay it off in 3 years. And you only have to put down $14,000. Now, people are like, oh, well, you're overpaying for that truck. Because if you went to the dealership, you could have got it for $20,000 less. And I'm like, okay, but maybe the person who bought it didn't want to put $40,000 down because they didn't have it, and they did what was necessary to get in a truck and still own it in 3 years. In other words, it doesn't matter what you think could have been done better, because we all know lots of stuff can be done better. What matters is that the person making the deal, entering into the bargain for exchange, gets what they need. And let me simplify this even more. And this is kind of like jurisprudence, right? Legal philosophy. If I am hungry, okay, and I walk into a restaurant, and the restaurant has a meal, and we'll just say it's a fast food place. The restaurant has a meal. It has a beverage, it has an entree and a side, okay? Could be hamburger, could be tacos, whatever it is, right? And they say, that's $10. Okay, so from a jurisprudential point of view, the question then becomes, and people make these decisions like that, right? Because they don't think through what I'm walking you through. But the question then becomes, if I have a $10 bill and they have food that they value at $10, the question is, do I want the food more than I want $10? It could be a little bit more or a lot more. But if it's either, then I buy the food, right? If I want the $10 more than I want the food, then I don't make the deal. If I say, you know, that meal is only worth $8 and they want $10, I want my $10 more than I want that food, then guess what? You keep the 10 and you're still hungry. That's the bargain for exchange. Now, you could say to them, hey, I think you're overcharging. I think that meal's only worth $8, but I would be willing to give you $9 for it. So at that point, you're saying that it's more valuable to give up $9 than it is to go hungry. Now, they might say, okay, well, we'll sell it to you for $9. That means that they think that, assuming there's a profit motive, that the meal, everything to do to get that meal to you cost them less than $9. In other words, they value your $9 cash more than they value holding on to that meal. So that's what's going on. And what kind of got me on this rant or thinking about this is, like, you know, I was talking about incentivizing trainers, and somebody was like, well, you know, maybe the fact that you guys have to pay them, the trainees that is, from the truck. And by the way, it's not my money, it's the truck's money. There's an LLC that actually pays me as a W-2 employee. Okay, it's not my money, it's the truck's money. It's the business's money. But he said, well, you know, you're paying $900 a week, you know, and then with taxes and all that stuff, it's $1,200. And I'm like, you know, $1,200 is not a lot of money, because this truck can make $1,200 a day, and I'm paying that a week. And sometimes I don't even do half the work on the truck, and the truck made, you know, like I had a week recently with Paul on the truck made over $13,000 for the week. And I think net was around $8,000. So it's like, who cares, right? Like, well, how would it be a disincentive to me that I paid the guy, you know, around $1,200 with paying the taxes and stuff? It's a business expense anyway. Because if I don't have this guy, there's no way the truck's gonna make gross over 13 grand. And that the company that I work for is gonna bring in, you know, almost 8 grand. It's just not gonna happen, right? And so I said, that's a pittance, right? Like, that's not a lot of money for a professional truck driver who contributes so much more, right? I mean, hell, if that professional driver is running 3,000 miles a week and you're averaging $2 a mile, which by the way, this truck does, that's $6,000 of value in trade for $1,200. That's a 5x, or actually it's a 4x return on investment. How is that a bad deal? How is that a disincentive? And even if it was, I could just be like, you know what? I don't mind paying that. I mean, honestly, I hate to sound self-serving, but I'm a generous guy. You could ask anybody that used to work for me in my law firm, right? I paid people as much as I could. I paid everybody a bonus at Christmas time. And I bought everybody lunch practically every day at whatever restaurant we would just choose as a group. And I'm not talking about McDonald's or pizza bull crap. I'm talking about California Pizza Kitchen or halal places or, whatever people wanted, right? You could ask any of my former employees about it. It's probably why they all still talk to me. But it's the bargain for exchange. I valued the people that worked for me more than, and my partner too. We would get together and come up with a bonus pool. And we'd be like, oh, well, we'll each kick in $30,000. We valued our employees more than we each valued holding on to $30,000. And so, these people that want to come on anybody's channel and say, oh, well, that's a terrible deal. And by the way, after I said this to the guy, I was like, yeah, I don't really care about the 900 or 1200 because I make way more money, right? Because think about it. If I spent $1,200 on an employee and he made me $1,300, then he's profitable, right? I'm net $100 positive. But it's not even that close. I mean, it's like, 5x, 4x. But then the guy was like he couldn't really refute that. So then he's like, well, maybe Prime's double dipping. And I'm like, so then that part of it, like when somebody says, going back to the meal, if I pay $10, and I'm hungry, do you really sit there at the counter and go, man, let me think about how much profit they're making here? No, that's not part of the bargain for exchange. It doesn't matter that I overpaid for the house. I wanted the house. I knew I was overpaying for it, right? I don't care that Prime charges me X, right? Because I know they're doing it. They're not hiding it. And if they're double dipping somehow and they're cheating the IRS, that ain't my business. I don't care. That's a Prime thing. That's not a me thing. I don't have any, the IRS isn't coming after me if Prime's double. Why do I care, right? Why do I care? All I care about is, am I getting out of the relationship what I want, right? In the bargain for exchange. So if you're that person who just worries, like these are the same people that pay, 30%, 40% markup on RVs, right? Because that's the market. Like, they're pieces, I know people that worked in the RV industry and they will tell you they're pieces of crap, right? They're aluminum siding on wheels. They're not well constructed, and yet people are like, oh yeah, I'm getting an RV. Why don't they say, hey, how come this company in Indiana is making 40% profit on these things? And then somebody's like, well, I made a really good deal. I crammed them down $10,000 on a $70,000 RV. It's like, dude, they still made money, right? Because that's how business works, right? You're in it to make money. They don't care. You think you got a great deal, they're still laughing all the way to the bank. And that's how it is with everything, right? That's how business works. Nobody goes into business and says, well, let's just break even. Or, let's lose money once in a while because we like people. I am willing to overpay for things for different reasons. I go, when I have a friend in a business, I'll go to them first, even though they charge me more, Why? Because I like them. I literally want to give them money. But they don't want to just say, oh, Terry, give me 20 bucks. They'll say, oh, Terry, I'm going to put a new roof on your house. I'll be like, okay, cool, man. How much? Okay, here you go. I could get it done cheaper, but I want to give them the business. And so it is with any deal. I want to do the deal I'm doing with Prime. And I understand all the charges. Like I read my statements, every line item. I'm like, oh, I got charged for that. I got charged for that. But guess what? Like I get charged for having a pre-pass and an easy pass. But so what? I would be getting charged for it anyway, and I don't have to worry about it. Like that's value to me. I don't have to worry about it. So anyway, I don't want to rant too long because I already have. But thanks for watching. And if you get it, you get it. And if you don't, I'm really sorry for you. But guess what? You're getting ripped off every single time you go into a fast food place. You're getting ripped off every single time. If that's your definition of being ripped off, right? Every transaction you do, you're getting ripped. And I guarantee, in fact, if I went through these people that make these comments, if I went through their books and records and I looked at all the things they do, I'd be like, holy crap, did you know you paid this? And they'd be like, oh, I didn't realize that. Of course you didn't. You wanted something and you got it, right? That's the bargain for exchange. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. Appreciate all the new subscribers. We're growing. And by the way, when I get to like 1,000 subscribers, I'm going to start doing live shows that I'm going to call, well, we're going to do different live shows, but we're also going to play some games. And we're going to have periodically a show I'll call Trucker Trivia, and we're going to be giving away prizes. One of my daughters is working on designs for a Tim Travels t-shirt that'll feature a little silhouette of me and a little silhouette of B and the truck, and we'll give the shirts away. We'll have a few different colors, we'll have several sizes, and we'll give them away when you answer questions right on the live show. So stay tuned for that. Again, I appreciate everybody, and be safe out there. Got some crazy weather coming to the east here, and I don't think winter's over yet. Just saying. Anyway, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.